In conversation with Carollyne Haynes. Carollyne has been playing with words in one form or another all her life, from editorial assistant on London's famous Fleet Street to author of turbulent novels. Born in Devon, she immigrated to Canada at age 20 and now lives in Vancouver Island with her husband, Jim. As a young woman, she changed her name from Gail to Carollyne in order to try and shake the memories associated with her turbulent youth. Her first book, a memoir entitled Raised by Committee, covers Gail's coming of age during the 60s sexual revolution as a ward of the court in need of moral protection. Carollyne's career included positions such as member's assistant in the Canadian House of Commons, managers of a Chamber of Commerce, and assistant to the board of directors for two health regions, all of which put her writing skills to work. She has three children, four grandchildren, two step grandchildren, and a very cute grand dog. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to offer the show today, Carollyne Haynes. How are you doing today, Carollyne? Welcome on the
I'm
show.
doing very, I'm doing very well, thank you, Peter. We're having a good day here on Vancouver Island. So,
It's so lovely to have you on the show today, really. I'm very excited we are here to sit and have a conversation around the beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
you're welcome.
Yeah. So, Caroline, I need to first say that your memoir is incredible, personal, and powerful to me while I read through it. I wanted to ask you, when did you first feel ready to put your childhood experience into writing? And was there a particular moment or event that pushed you to begin?
I would say it started when I first retired. I spent my working life writing business reports and newsletters and things like that.
Yeah,
But when I retired, I wanted to write novels. I've always enjoyed writing. So I took a course. It was called Free Fall into Creative Writing, and it was
yeah,
by W.O. Mitchell, that theory. And because I wanted to start cluing into my creative writing skills, not business.
yeah.
So during this course, they would ask that you'd have 10 minutes. They said, okay, just write. We all had our computers and we just write and write and write. And much to my surprise, what kept burbling up was I would start talking about things that had happened when I was a young girl, 11 years old. And this bothered me that it kept coming up because I'd spent my whole life trying to suppress these memories, you know. I kept digging anyway and writing. And then I was talking to my husband one day and I said, well, I really want to write a book, but I don't want it to be about childhood sexual abuse. There
Mm,
were a lot of books on the market at the time, and I just I just didn't want to open that.
yeah.
Okay. But my husband said, well, that's the real story is what happened after the police came, because the
Mm,
police did end up coming. My father was taken in, arrested, and it went on from there. And my siblings and I were taken to a children's home. And I was then made a ward of the court in need of moral protection
mm.
because both of my parents were just deemed not suitable to be parents.
Wow.
So that's what I sort of realized, well, that's where the story is. What happened after the police came? So
Mm,
what I did then is I started trying to find the woman who had run the children's home. Her name was Lillian Hopkins, and we all called her nurse. We didn't call her matron, we called her nurse. And I tried to find her, but I could find no trace of her.
mm.
So, and she would have been into her 90s. So I thought, I guess she's passed away. So then I moved on to trying to find a woman called Dawn. We used to call her Auntie Dawn because she was nurse's assistant.
Mm,
And I found a listing for one person with her surname in Torquay, which is near where the children's home was.
yeah,
So on a whim, I called that number thinking maybe it was a relative of hers or something because it was a man's name.
yeah.
Anyway, I dialed and picked up the phone. This woman picked up the phone. I said, oh, I'm trying to find Dawn Hyde. And she said, oh, yes. I said, I was wondering if you could give me her contact number. And she
Mm.
just said, speaking. So
Wow.
anyway, so I found Auntie Dawn, and she told me that nurse was still alive, actually,
Mm.
and she was living in a care home in Poole. So she gave me nurse's phone number,
Yeah.
and it took me a few days to pluck up the courage to call her because I certainly hadn't been what you would call the model child. I was a bit of a
Mm.
handful, actually.
Mm.
And so anyway, I did finally call nurse at this care home she was living in then. And I said, hello, nurse. I don't know if you'll remember me, but my name was Gail. And she chuckled. She said, oh, yes, dear. I remember
Wow.
you. She said,
Wow.
you're the one that called me a witch. So
Oh,
anyway,
is it?
I guess I had. She must have called me on a bad day. Um, anyway, so I'd found nurse, I'd found Auntie Dawn, and then I phoned the Devon County Council
Mm.
and asked if, by any chance, under the Freedom of Information Act, if they would have the file dealing with my time in their care. Because every
Mm.
time a social worker came to see me, she'd always sit there taking notes and writing everything down. And I
Mm.
know they made regular reports, the childcare worker made regular reports to the Children's Committee. Anyway, this woman that I was talking to at the county council said, oh, yes, yes, we can get that for you, but it'll take a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. We'll have
Yeah.
to redact it and do all that stuff. So anyway, within 2.5 weeks, Jim and I were on a plane. We'd arranged to meet with nurse, meet with Auntie Dawn,
Mm.
and pick up the file. So, and I read that file cover to cover. It was 500 pages.
Wow.
And at the end of that, I just sat there and thought, I was literally raised by a committee. And
Mm.
that's where the book sprung from, that
Mm.
concept.
Wow. That's a trunket of a story. I can see it. It's quite emotional. It's quite
Mm.
huge. It's quite a lot to digest. And it is amazing as well. I must say thank you so much for that lovely illustration and story background into the making of it. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing. Yeah. And also, Caroline, your story covers some powerful themes like survivor,
Mm-hmm.
identity, and finding strength through hardship. How did you go about choosing what to share and shaping everything into a meaningful and cohesive story?
It was a process, Peter, it really was. And first off, my first version of Raised by Committee, I went back to my W.O. Mitchell writing
Mhm.
style and I just put everything on the paper, everything, every hurt, every shard of anger and betrayal. I put it all down on paper
Mm.
and I just got it out there. And then I put it aside for 2, 3 weeks, took a deep breath, and then I went back and read it.
Mm.
And it was only in reading it that I thought the real story, it's about the
Mm.
care
Yeah.
I received. It's
Mm.
about, like, I was understandably quite troublesome, shall we say. I would run away. My father had been abusing me. My mother had abandoned us, all four of us. There were four children. She'd gone off
Wow.
with her boyfriend.
Wow.
So I had a lot of processing to do there. But anyway, I cut out anything that didn't move the story forward. Okay. So it's definitely a story of acknowledging the work and the true compassion of the people who work in childcare services,
Mm.
that got the focus of the story in. Okay. And it's a coming of age, definitely a
Mm.
coming of age. Some of the other themes that are written into it, just by following my brother and sister, or my two brothers and my sister, my elder brother went to live with our grandparents, so he had stable environment.
Yeah.
I was sent to a children's home, which was located next to or near a grammar school, so I could continue my education, which was very important to me. I did realize that my future would hinge on getting a good education because I was going to have to take care of myself, okay?
Mm.
And then my younger brother was bounced around various children's homes, foster homes, and the likes. And my
Mm.
younger sister was returned to my mother, our mother. And she bounced back and forth between those situations. So that each of us, interestingly enough, took a different path. So I wrote my story. I was very clear about the fact that I was only writing my story. It's my brother and my sister,
Mm.
if they had chosen to write their own. So
Mm. Oh, wow. That must have been an emotional ride for you. And I'm coming back to that because I wanted to ask you, how were you able to choose what to share, first of all, and what not to share, what to remove out of it? And also, of the things you removed later on, for instance, do you have one that you later thought, oh, I should have included that, you know, if in any way?
I think I thought more on the other line. Like I was very careful to not portray any of the extended family.
In a bad manner?
I respected their privacy.
Okay.
The family I come from, my grandparents were very well respected in town. My father had a band, like a Glenn Miller style band. So people used to tell me how lucky I was to have such neat parents and all this stuff. So it was really hard to draw a line between, yes, my mother was an amazing pianist, my father was a great band leader, and the life I was living at home. It was a hard
Interacting.
road.
Yeah.
I put some things in that portray me as quite not a nice person.
Mm.
It's not that I wasn't a nice person. I did some stupid things as a teenager because I was processing a lot of hurt, a lot of anger, and it would have been
Mm.
nice to erase those and pretend I was perfect, but I
Yeah.
wasn't. So anyway, yeah. But I have left the surname of the family. I've used a
Out.
fictional surname because my brothers, they have to live their own life, you know.
Mm. That's such a roller coaster. That is such a roller coaster. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And some part of your story must have been hard to write.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just beginning to think about it, that actually it must have been very hard to write and pen down.
It was.
Now, I
It
wanted to
was.
ask you, how were you able to cope with the emotion associated with writing this book, if you ever have any?
Well, fortunately, my
Mm.
husband Jim is very, very understanding. And I literally put it out there to my friends that I am going to be locking myself away for 3 months. I have
Wow.
to get this out. I have to write this. And I got angry a lot looking back on it because also when I read the file, there had been stuff going on behind the scenes that I
Mm.
hadn't really been aware of at the time.
Wow.
So that helped because I realized how hard they were working, to make my life okay, to make my life
Mm.
good, actually. Because I
Mm.
didn't just survive, I thrived. I've gone
Mm.
on to lead a fabulous life. I cried a lot. I cried
Mm.
a lot. And, recently I've converted the written book into an audio book.
Oh,
And I
wow.
have to say, I found that harder in a way than writing it because I'm
Oh,
used to writing. I can
oh.
say, I can type words and write messages, no
Mm.
problem. But to stand there at the microphone and start speaking about these things, and I have to say, I got to one section, I thought, oh, why did I include that?
Mm.
When I got into a situation with a man, I was only about 14, 15 at the time, and
Wow.
got into a situation, I was out of my depth. Fortunately, and I do have a guardian angel because fortunately my guardian angel was with me that night,
Mm.
and the man turned out to be a very decent person. And when he realized how young I was, he said, "Oh, sorry, here," and he walked me to the bus and sent me home. So I've had some very lucky breaks in my life that could have gone the other way.
Mm. From your answer to that, I wanted to ask you, did writing all of this down help you heal or feel more at peace with your past, even anyway? And also, what changes would you like to see in the way society treats children in care? Let's do the first question first. Does it help you to get at peace with your past in any way?
It did, Peter. What I found once I'd sort of emerged from the black hole of writing all this,
Yeah.
um, I felt authentic, for want of a better word.
Wow.
You know, I am me, and here I am. This is my life so far, and you know, it's been a good one, except for that bit.
Mm.
So yeah, I felt authentic, um, and accepting. Rather
Wow.
than hating myself for having gone through that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I came to the realization that my life was good. Actually, my life has
Mm.
been good since then.
Oh,
So
wow. I love your take on that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And what changes would you like to see in the way society treats children in care?
I've been asked this question before, and to me, looking back on pictures, okay, you can see
Yeah.
me as a young child, 8, 9, 10. I'm happy, outward going, and and then going through the photo album, I see a picture of me age 11, 11 and a half,
Mm.
and I'm gaunt. I'm huddled like this. What
Mm.
I don't understand is how adults around me didn't see that something was obviously going wrong.
Mm. It's
And so I think we need to be able to talk about it more. We used to have a thing called Zenith 1234. I don't know if
mm.
you had it in England too. It's where children could phone. And I did try one time phoning social services for help. This is
Mm.
after my mother had left. And it was a Saturday, and the phone rang and rang and rang. And
Wow.
finally, someone answered the phone. I think it was a cleaning lady or something. And I
Mm.
explained to her that I needed help. And she said, well, go to the police. Um, so I wish there was an easier route for children to be able to say, I need help. I
Mm.
need help. It needs to be talked about. There's an organization here in Canada called Little Warriors, and
Oh.
they help. Do you have it in England too now? They help children who are subject to abuse as children. And it's an organization. They have counselors that are trained to recognize this sort of thing.
Oh,
They go
wow.
into schools hoping to raise awareness in teaching staff.
Yeah.
The clues and on the alarm bells that might go off. So yeah, it needs to be taught, which was another driving reason for putting the book out there.
Mm.
People need to know that this stuff happens,
Yeah, it
you know,
does.
and
Yeah.
there's got to be a way to stop it. I don't
Mm.
know how totally, but there's got to be a way to stop it.
Mm.
So,
And one of the things I realize, yeah, I mean, I've read a bit of sexual assault novels in the past few weeks, and hilariously, I've been interviewing good numbers of authors in this particular genre. What I've
mm-hmm,
come to realize is the perpetrators of this act are not necessarily strangers. They are people that are close to you. They are people that you know. They could be family members, they could be relatives, they could be friends, they could be cousins, they could be, people that you find quite unbelievable that this person did this to you. Like, seriously? So it
mm-hmm.
is quite a shocking, a global crisis that needed to be attended to quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was walking, we were out hiking. I
Yeah.
was with a friend, my daughter and her friend, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and she was skipping along the trail in front of me, and we're just chatting. Anyway, and I don't know what made it happen, but as I looked at her, I was suddenly hit by a 2x4 because I thought, my God, I was that age when my father started doing these things to me, and she
Mm,
was just a child.
mm,
And I was just overwhelmed with emotion because I thought, if I even thought anyone was going to do anything like that to my daughter, I would kill them. I would go at them with a 2x4.
mm,
So I have to ask why my mother didn't. you know? So I've actually had the opportunity to speak at various women's shelters.
mm.
And I was at one giving a speech, a talk over in a place called Grand Forks.
Oh.
And one of the women in the group, it turned out, she hadn't been abused, but she had come to hear the lecture or the talk because
Mm.
her daughter was abused
Wow.
and the mother was dealing with the guilt because she had not intervened.
Mm. Honestly
It's
speaking.
very complicated, like it just destroys the whole family.
Honestly
So it takes
speaking.
courage for mothers to step up to the bait and to say, hey, my daughters needs help. We need help.
It leaves a horrible mark of dysfunctionality in the family, and you'd be like, oh no. Yeah, I remember when I spoke to her, like, yeah, I had to break ties with my dad. I just had to break ties. That's one of the ways I was able to cope and survive. I
Mhm.
had to, break ties, not having anything to do with him anymore. Yeah,
Right.
that's something else, really.
It's a hard one. And, yes, it's a very hard topic,
Yeah,
which is
it is.
why I always tell that Raised by Committee is about overcoming that. It's
Mm,
about putting the issue out there. Don't let this happen to you, your children, your friends, like
mm,
be aware, be aware. Uh,
absolutely. I love your take on this, really. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, apart from the book we've mentioned, apart from Raised by Committee, do you have any other works you've authored or currently working on?
I have another book that I was published a couple of years ago. It's called A Matter of Issue. That one deals with birthrights and inheritances. It's a fictional book, but a lot of us, as we go through watching our parents pass and all that,
Yeah.
maybe some money, some inheritance that's on the table, and siblings start getting a little kind of twitchy about who's going to get how much.
You
So,
know.
anyway, I've written a book about an elderly couple. The gentleman, he's widowed, and he decides he's going to get married to a younger woman. And so that sets the whole family off into it. Oh no, she's going to run off with our inheritance. So anyway,
Oh,
that's my second book. So
oh wow.
another one that is in the works, but it's still stuck right up here. Hasn't been up here yet. So
Well, it's a somewhere hanging, hoping to come down to paper very soon.
yes, I hope so too.
Thank you. Thank you for a lovely. I mean, I've been enjoying your answers to this question so far. It's a
Yeah.
lovely one, and I'm really impressed with your story and the making of Race by Committee. Thank you very much for sharing. I wanted to ask you, would you give any sort of advice for upcoming writers who are struggling with writing and publishing a book?
Well, we all come to something that works for us. What worked for me, and I hope it would work for others too. Like
Yeah.
I say, I got into that free fall writing style. Number one, I actually had the privilege of having dinner with a gentleman called John Ralston Saul. He's a philosopher here in Canada.
Oh,
He's the husband of who was our Governor General at the time.
oh,
And over dinner, I mentioned to him that I was just editing my first book, Raised by Committee. And I said, "Oh, I keep editing it and blah blah blah." And he said, "Well, my advice to you is to write it, edit it, get it out there, and start the next one." So I would say the same to people. You want it to be good. You want it to have a
yeah,
story with a message.
yeah,
And I was once told every story should answer a question.
yeah,
You need to be discussing some issue or have a point. It needs to have a
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Um, so you get all that stuff organized. I also went down the road of trying to find a traditional publisher.
Hmm.
And you send them off a copy of the manuscript. They say, "Oh, we'll get back to you in 3 months," and then they come back and say, "Oh, it's not quite what we're looking for." Then you
Hmm.
send it somewhere else. You could spend years doing that.
Yeah,
There are other options. There's
yeah,
what we call indie publishing. You
yeah.
can, yes, and that has worked very well. So because I now have the written book, the ebook, now I have the audio book. So
Wow,
as technology has changed, I have kept
Francis.
up with it.
Yeah.
So some people just go straight to audiobooks now. They don't even
Mm,
bother putting it on paper. So
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, well, I
So
love
yeah, that's my advice. Just don't overthink it. If you believe in the story, others will too.
Let's do it. Yeah. That's a lovely advice you've gotten there, and I'm hoping that viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize it. And just in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of Risk by Committee. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
It's available on Amazon worldwide. Audible is the audio copy of the book.
Yeah.
And so, yes, through Amazon, Canada, US, UK. I've even sold some in Japan. So I
Oh,
guess they
wow.
have the English version over there. So,
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
amazing.
so that's where I would direct people. I have a website too. It's www.carolynehaynes,
Mm,
HAYNES.com. And that there gives you all the information about where you can obtain copies.
yeah. That's great. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Caroline Ain's book directly on Amazon and Barnes& Nobles on our website and also on other platforms. I also left a link to our social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Caroline, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say, this conversation is more than awesome. So emotional, so great, lovely. It's a global crisis that needed to be attended to. And thank you for taking the time to come up to share your story and share your work. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Peter. I've really enjoyed meeting you. All right. And as I always tell people, and then we all lived happily ever after. So it's a very
Mm,
hard book to read, but it's a good message.
yeah, great message you've got in there. Thank you.